Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show on News Radio 910 WSBA as we enter the bottom of the start of the second half hour here. And I'm coming to you live from Fair this morning here in Washington, D.C., where they have to hold their feet to the fire event. Actually, we're coming to you live from the Phoenix Park Hotel. And with me this morning, two of my favorite people, and I've gotten to know them over the last year or so. And Fred and Peggy Davis are fourth-generation cattle and horse ranchers near Tombstone, Arizona, in the hot zone of Cochise County. They're right down on the border. They've made themselves available here today to talk a little bit about what it's like to live on the border. You know, a lot of us hear about all the statistics and, people don't really seem real. Well, when you talk to these two people, they're real, and they go through real things every day. And we welcome Fred and Peggy Davis to the show. Good morning, Fred and Peggy.
Good morning.
Thank you, Gary.
Fred, great to have you on. Peggy as well. I read somewhere, Peggy, that you said, I spend days like a prisoner in my own home at times. Talk a little bit about what it's like to go through that kind of existence on the border.
Well, I live 25 miles north of the border,
okay.
and my closest neighbor is a mile away, and the next closest one is several miles away. So when it came to a point in time when I felt like, I didn't lock the front door when I came in from watering the flowers, I shouldn't have to feel that way that many miles, being remote like that. But there just came a time where the numbers were so many, and I just felt like I had to be just vigilant all the time. If I went to the barn to feed my horses or something, then I just felt I don't have a gun. Oh my, I better go back to the house and get one. It's just like there were so many that I felt like I had to be protected.
Fred is a husband and also a rancher. I guess you've got to be concerned when she's got that kind of attitude and you're out doing some work, right?
Absolutely, Gary. There was a point we caught 107 illegals within a mile and a half of the house in 24 hours, and you look for somebody under every bush when it's that thick.
When you say you caught them and you confront people, what are they telling you? What are they saying, if anything? And what kinds of people are coming through that region?
Well, we don't confront them anymore.
Yeah.
We used to, but the numbers just got crazy. And you're just outnumbered. So you really just called the Border Patrol and you tried not to talk to them or engage with them at all. And the Border Patrol wouldn't come at all unless there were numbers of, maybe 10 or more.
I've never been a rancher or a farmer or a person that's owned something, especially fourth generation when it's come through your family. But I said to somebody last night, we were talking about you last night, and I said, if it were me, I might just leave, if it went on that all the time. But again, I couch it all by saying, you got pride in where you've been, you've got pride in your family, you got pride and equity built up in your ranch. How do you respond to that when people, I'm sure I'm not the first person who ever said that. Why don't you just get out of there because it looks dangerous?
Well, and if you were thrown into our situation all at one time, it would be overwhelming. But when you get it brought at you a little bit at a time, you learn to deal with all these various issues. There was a period of time when we went home, walked around the outside of the house, checked for broken windows, walked inside and cleared the house with a gun every time.
Well, and there are people that live near us that still do that. We don't happen to be in a real high traffic area right now, but we know that can change any day.
The traffic has changed since the cartel took over the people smuggling as well as the drugs.
Talk a little bit about the cartel and why it's changed, maybe, if you can.
Well, there's several cartels. The Sinaloa cartel runs northern Sonora as well. About 05, 06, they found out how lucrative smuggling people could be as well as the drugs. So if you don't pay them to be smuggled out of Mexico into the U.S., you will have to carry drugs for them.
And that's the so-called mules that we hear about, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're not coming across. The gardeners and maids aren't walking across the border by themselves anymore like happened years ago.
So you kind of got to make a pact with the devil, so to speak, to get across there.
Exactly.
It's interesting. I just saw a story this morning on the news about number of people. I think there were 16 people were smuggled across in trunks of cars, and they found, like, I forget how much marijuana in there being brought across with them. They've all been caught. They've all been charged now. And yet at the same time, I mean, I've got to think that's a mini piece of the iceberg that's going on daily, right?
Oh, sure. It's not unusual for them to catch, vans full of people, and they stack them like cordwood. I mean, what Mexico is allowing to be done to their people is nothing short of terrorism.
Right.
And 40 miles away in well, it's not 40, it's closer than that. It's about 25 miles away in the border town of Agua Prieta. The drug cartels have killed 40, 50 people in the last month. But the news media isn't going to tell you about that.
You brought up smuggling the marijuana. The justice courts, the federal courts in Tucson are so backlogged that they don't prosecute anything less than 500 pounds. So if you bring less, the mules pack, the groups will have 490 to 95 pounds is what they're bringing.
That's unbelievable. I mean, so under 500 pounds doesn't count. 500 pounds.
If you're illegal.
They just deport them if they're illegal.
Yeah.
If you'd like to ask a question this morning, you wouldn't mind taking a few questions from people, right?
Not at all.
1-800-357-0910. Feel free to call in and ask Fred and Peggy, about what they have to go through every day down in their ranch, or maybe some questions you have about illegal immigration as it relates to them. I want to get back a little bit to this. When did illegal immigration, when did all this kind of stuff first affect both of you? When did you really kind of start to get in there where it was really a problem?
15 to 20 years ago, it began to be a problem.
The numbers became enough where, as a kid growing up, and when we were first married, everybody came to the door, we fed them. And they were agricultural workers coming out of Mexico. They wanted to work from 60, 90 days and take money back to Mexico.
And they were very respectful, and so were we. We
so this is not about race or skin or anything like that. It's and you're all living. Everybody's living together down there.
Sure.
So what changed it? What happened then? Where you went from that respectful kind of, okay, we're helping you out as people here, to there's a whole different attitude now.
We began to be vandalized quite a bit. They would drain our water tanks, cut our fences, and of course sheer numbers trampling across your property and ruining your grassland doesn't endear you to them, but ranchers were very frustrated. And then part of the reason is because in Mexico they were hearing that ranchers were vigilantes and they were going to hurt them, and so they were automatically very distrustful of us. And
wow.
And they feel like we stole their property from them. That part of the Gadsden Purchase they feel like belongs to them, and it's their state of Aztlan, and they would like to have it back.
Fred, can you put your finger on a moment that you remember amidst all the various incidences you've had where you said, this is pretty scary?
When I walked in the barn one morning and there were 13 guys asleep on the floor, this before daylight, I walked in there, and that's when we scared each other to death, and they were actually harmless guys. And I went, okay, I got to pack a gun 24/7. I cannot risk my life.
Peggy, have you ever had anybody in your house when you came back home that you know of?
I haven't. I have lots of friends that has happened to them. I've seen evidence that they were in my yard. We had one time. My daughter was home by herself, and one came to the front door. She was in college, but she was home by herself, and the door was locked, and I'd always taught my children to talk to them through the window and not open the door. So she talked to this gentleman, and I use that term loosely. He was very threatening with her. He had something, she said, behind his back. You could tell he was holding his hand behind his back, and he wanted a ride to Phoenix, and she said she couldn't give him a ride, and he said, well, I need some help, and my friend and I wanted to make sure you were home alone before we came to the house.
Wow.
And she asked him to leave, which he did, because she said I could call the Border Patrol, and of course then he knew that she would be calling the Border Patrol, and it made him angry, but he left. And the important thing here is she called Our nearest, help is 15 miles away, roughly. And she called a friend. She called the Border Patrol, and she called the Sheriff's Department. And the friend came before the other two. So when we call 911, we're not going to get any help. So we really have to take care of ourselves there.
It sounds like, and you hear a lot of people sitting away talking about this academically, and they'll say, well, immigration reform should start with stopping things on the border, but not just on the southern border, but on the northern border, on the oceans, being more vigilant with that. And then we need to take care of the people who are illegally employing these people, and then we need to take care of the 12 to 16 to 20 million people in this country. I'm sure you've heard that ad nauseum. Tell us about the border and how well it's patrolled right now, at least in your particular part of the world.
Well, Gary, Peggy and I went the 4th of July and drove, which is supposed to be an Amber Alert Day.
Okay.
Rife for terrorism. So we went and drove 17 miles from the Huachuca Mountains to Loquillo of the border. Did not see one agent.
Wow.
17 miles. Not one. I brought that up at a meeting. They say the best way to react with the Border Patrol is try to embarrass them in public. So I brought it up, and the guy in charge of that station at Sonoita came up to me after the meeting and handed me his card, and he said, if you ever drive it again and don't see an agent, feel free to call me.
All right.
I thought, how ridiculous can you be?
I was down at Tombstone one time, not too long ago, probably about 5 or 6 years. And I was down in the area of Douglas, and I was going along the fence. I mean, I was actually driving with a friend along the fence, and he was taking us on a tour there of that particular part of Arizona. He lived up in Phoenix. And what was interesting to me was I would see some Border Patrol vans or cars every now and then, but only, when I say every now and then, I think I saw one Border Patrol vehicle. I didn't see another one for like 25 miles. And we were kind of along that fence line for that whole time. And I'm thinking, well, hang on here for a second. And the fences don't look that high to me. I mean, it doesn't look to me like it's real hard to get across from where I was standing. So
in some places they aren't.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering how we can say that we are doing a good job, the federal government's doing a good job on border control.
Well, they don't need agents on the border. Have you never heard that? You need them 25 to 30 miles inside the border.
Yeah.
That's where they put the majority of the agents.
Their written plan protects the cities, force the illegals into the surrounding rural areas, and then they have 2 days to catch them before they can get to a major highway.
So most of them are north of me. So congratulations, America. I'm your first line of defense.
Wow. When you look at this whole thing right now, I mean, your people have to live with this day in and day out. Your people that are the receivers of our lack of enforcement. Your emotions that you have.
Oh, I feel betrayed, disgusted, almost ashamed. We're just like the laughing stock of Mexico.
Yeah.
It's in the Constitution that the federal government will protect us from all invasion. We are invaded, and they don't make, it is not an honest effort. There is no will in Washington to seal the border.
Yet the president says we've deported 2 million people, more people than we've ever had before, even though they count the people that they stop at the border and send back when they try to come through. But we just found out that we've only deported about 133,000 this year as of this morning. That doesn't sound like a lot. That's like 80-some a day, and I'm sure 80-some a day might be coming across not far from you, just at one point.
Well, they turned loose 68,000 felons back into society.
Saw that. Yeah.
So, he can brag all he wants. We know what the truth is. He brags about there are more agents on the border than ever before. That's true. But there are more criminal element also. And when you consider there's 21,000 agents on the north and south border combined, that's almost 6,000 miles of border. And there are 37,000 cops in New York City. You put that into perspective, and we are not protecting our citizens for national security reasons.
We're going to take a very quick break. We're going to come back. Fred and Peggy Davis with us. They are ranchers. You're welcome to give us a call, 1-800-357-0910. They'll be back with me, Gary Sutton, live from Washington, D.C., here on News Radio 910 WSBA. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA. We're live with Fred and Peggy Davis from Arizona, where they get to experience illegal immigration, not in some kind of academic conversation, but in real life, and have about 3 minutes left with them right now. So from your vantage point, Peggy, what would be real immigration reform right now that could help you live a life like the rest of us do, not worrying about leaving the house and, what might be in there when you come back?
Well, the very first and most important thing is to secure the border. Put the agents on the border, stop the influx of traffic into our country. And you can't do another thing about reforming until you stop that influx of traffic across the border. It doesn't matter whether our government convinces Joe America out there that it's not amnesty. They can try to convince you all they want, but if Mexico sees it as amnesty, they come in the hordes, and they get the word, and as soon as they get even a hint that we're going to give them amnesty, here they come.
We're going to have to make a big push, though, if we're going to do that, to have a lot more people on the border, aren't we?
Well, probably. Yeah. But if they put the majority of the agents that they have on the border, it would help. Of course, they'll tell you that won't work. They'll try to convince you that won't work. But like I said, I know that I have to shut the front door if I want to keep people out. And one real quick thing you asked earlier, even if Fred and I wanted to move away, our property is not valued at about half of what it was 20 years ago. That's a shame. It really is terrible. About 30 seconds left, Fred. What do we need to do to, again, we're talking to real people here. We're not talking to the faceless people down there that the administration wants to forget about. Your thoughts?
You can't talk amnesty, citizenship, anything until the border's sealed up. Like Peggy mentioned, they come in droves the minute amnesty is ever talked about. They can falsify documents, get all their stuff to where it shows they've been here since whatever day the cutoff was. Documents are cheap in the days of these good printers we have.
Fred and Peggy, it's always good talking to you, but I'm always sad when I get done because I wish you nothing but the best and hope that we could do something seriously good for people like you and you in the future. But thank you for joining me here this morning on the Gary Sutton Show.
Thanks for having us.
We look forward to talking again, and hopefully you're in happier times. When we come back, Dennis Lynch is director of the films They Come to America. Most recently, We Ride to D.C. Our porous borders, you just heard about them in person here. What does that mean? Drugs, violence, possibly the next terrorist attack? Dennis will also talk reality when we come back here on the Gary Sutton Show, and then Ira Melman from FAIR will join us at 10:35, and at 10:45, Ken Matlack from Oregon. All with us here on the Gary Sutton Show, live from Washington, D.C. on News Radio 910 WSBA, where it's 10 o'clock.